This story starts with an HOA Karen trying to use 911 as her personal guest list enforcement tool and ends with the police doing the exact opposite of what she expected. Before we jump in, tell me which country you're watching from. And if you enjoy HOA chaos and neighborhood drama, do like, subscribe for more stories, and hit that hype button because this one turns fast. Our neighborhood was the kind of place that sold an image before anything else. Clean sidewalks, identical mailboxes, and rules posted so often they felt like decorations. The HOA prided itself on control, not comfort. Visitors were tolerated only if they blended in, stayed quiet, and left quickly. Anything outside the invisible line became a problem. Karen lived at the center of that system. She wasn't the HOA president, but she acted like it. She tracked cars, counted how many nights visitors stayed, and memorized license plates like it was a competitive sport. She believed the neighborhood belonged to those who enforce rules, not those who lived under them. My household had guests visiting for a long weekend. Family members who lived out of town had come to celebrate a milestone. Everything was normal, respectful, and well within HOA guidelines. Cars were parked legally, noise levels were low, no rules were broken. But Karen noticed unfamiliar faces. She watched from behind her curtains as suitcases were unloaded. She counted the number of people entering the house. She decided without checking any rule book that too many guests were staying too long. In her mind, it wasn't a visit, it was an invasion. Instead of contacting the HOA office or reviewing the actual bylaws, Karen chose escalation. She convinced herself that guests were not allowed without prior approval, even though no such rule existed. She decided that enforcement required immediate action. She called 911. She reported a group of people occupying a home without permission. She framed it as a safety concern, suggesting unauthorized individuals were refusing to leave the neighborhood. She made it sound urgent enough to demand police response. Inside the house, the guests were relaxed and unaware that someone was attempting to remove them by force of authority. Laughter echoed softly, food was prepared. It was a normal gathering, the kind that happens in neighborhoods every day. Police vehicles arrived within minutes. Karen positioned herself prominently, watching with satisfaction. She believed she had taken control of the situation. In her mind, the officers would confirm her authority, demand the guests leave, and restore what she believed was order. What happened instead didn't match her expectations. The officers approached calmly and professionally. They assessed the scene without urgency. They observed the environment, the parked cars, the lack of disturbance. Everything appeared peaceful. They checked property records and confirmed the homeowners were present and compliant. They verified the guests were invited and legally allowed to be there. The call unraveled almost immediately. There was no violation, no threat, no refusal to leave, just a misuse of emergency services fueled by entitlement and misinformation. The officers documented the call carefully, noting the claims made and the reality they observed. Karen's posture changed as the situation slipped out of her control. She remained nearby trying to assert her version of events, but the officers weren't interested in HOA interpretations. They focused on the law. Guests invited by homeowners were protected. The police made it clear that personal discomfort did not equal criminal behavior. Instead of removing the guests, the officers ensured they felt safe. They explained the situation, reassured everyone that no wrongdoing had occurred, and made it clear that no one was required to leave. The presence of law enforcement, intended as a weapon, became a shield. Karen's call was officially classified as unfounded. But that wasn't the end of it. The officers addressed the misuse of 911. They noted that emergency lines were not tools for enforcing HOA preferences. They warned that future calls without legitimate cause could lead to penalties. The interaction was calm but firm. Karen's authority evaporated in real time. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Neighbors who had watched silently from windows and porches began talking. Many had experienced similar harassment.
visitors questioned, deliveries challenged, friends made to feel unwelcome. This incident exposed something everyone already knew but had never confronted. The HOA board received notice from the police department. The report outlined the false emergency call and highlighted the risks such behavior posed to the community. It emphasized that misuse of emergency services could bring legal consequences, not just to individuals, but to organizations that enabled them. An emergency HOA meeting followed. Residents showed up in numbers rarely seen. The atmosphere was tense but energized. The board reviewed the incident in detail. They acknowledged that Karen had acted without authority and outside any written rule. They admitted that her behavior had gone unchecked for too long. Stories poured out. Residents described years of intimidation, visitors being questioned, deliveries challenged, friends made to feel unwelcome. This incident exposed something everyone already knew but had never confronted. The HOA board received notice from the police department. The report outlined the false emergency call and highlighted the risks such behavior posed to the community. It emphasized that misuse of emergency services could bring legal consequences, not just to individuals, but to organizations that enabled them. An emergency HOA meeting followed. Residents showed up in numbers rarely seen. The atmosphere was tense but energized. The board reviewed the incident in detail. They acknowledged that Karen had acted without authority and outside any written rule. They admitted that her behavior had gone unchecked for too long. Stories poured out. Residents described years of intimidation, visitors being questioned, deliveries challenged, friends made to feel unwelcome. This incident exposed something everyone already knew but had never confronted. The HOA board acted. Karen was formally barred from any enforcement activity. She was instructed to stop monitoring visitors and prohibited from contacting authorities on behalf of the HOA. Any future incidents would be documented and reported without protection. The decision sent a shock through the neighborhood. Karen retreated from visibility. Her daily patrols stopped. The sense of constant observation faded. For the first time in years, residents felt like the neighborhood belonged to them again. The guests stayed for the rest of their visit without issue. The police follow-up confirmed that the call would remain on record. Karen was warned officially that further misuse of emergency services could lead to charges. The message was unmistakable. Life returned to normal, but something had changed. Neighbors greeted each other more openly. Visitors were welcomed without side glances. The HOA, once aggressive, became cautious. Policies were clarified. Enforcement became structured and accountable. Karen remained inside her house, her influence reduced to silence. The irony was impossible to miss. She tried to ban guests by calling the highest authority she could think of, only to learn that the law protects people far more than HOA egos ever will. The lesson settled across the community quietly but firmly. Emergency services are not tools for personal power. HOAs do not outrank the law, and calling the police doesn't give someone control, especially when they're wrong. In the end, the guests were protected, the neighborhood healed, and Karen learned that authority imagined is no match for authority real. If you enjoyed this story, do like, subscribe for more, and hit that hype button so this video keeps climbing. And don't forget to tell me which country you're watching from. More HOA stories are coming.